Hey Storytellers, we're your hosts Ali and Kristy. We're here to tell you sometimes the journey sucks, but doesn't that make for the best stories? Welcome back, Storytellers. We have our second live storytelling episode for you guys. This is quickly becoming one of our favorites because it kind of brings our events, just lets everybody in. So this was from our March open mic night at Chiringo in Grayton, otherwise known as the local watering hole that brought Ali and I together. Sounds so romantic. But yes, this was such a fun night. I mean, we were upstairs at Chiringo, just like the garage doors were up, Gulf views. It was a little breezy, so we definitely had to close those after a while.
A little loud too.
Little loud. We had some business as usual downstairs, but in true Chiringo fashion, we did the theme hot mess, and in even truer fashion, we embodied that very well. That well. We took it a little too seriously. Just a funny tidbit, kind of leading up to the event. I was in the middle of a move at the time. So things are in boxes, things are in and out of cars. And Ali came over to pick up the mic and the amp and was like, I'm going to go get this set up. I'll meet you over there. And then I think it was about 30 minutes before that you call me.
Yes.
And you're like, hey, we're missing like the power cord.
I was like, I don't want to freak you out, but we're missing the part that plugs into the wall. And you're like, oh, it's not there. And I was like, I don't see it.
And I was like in the middle of like finishing up my story, like classic Kristy, like 30 minutes before the event. I should have it finished already. But yes, so I get on, I call like everyone I know, like who would have a mic and amp, like who are musician friends, like, sending pictures and like, yeah. And then we actually had a couple takers by the end, like, I'm just going to bring everything I have. I don't think it's the right one. And then by some miracle, Travis over at Chiringo had a buddy, Shane, that saved the mother freaking day.
He really did.
But it came together literally at the last second. But yeah, so, and hot mess, we, by definition, a person or thing that is spectacularly unsuccessful or disordered, especially one that is a source of peculiar fascination. And obviously, we love to add a positive spin. So what we told our storytellers, we said, tell us a story about a time life got turned upside down, a time things didn't go as planned, but the only choice was to pick up the pieces and carry on in all that messy glory. And that was an ode also to our featured storyteller, Bradley Copeland, who is just incredible. She's 25.
Yes.
And
so
she
talented.
was voted Artist of the Year by South Walton County for this year. And it's so funny because it's like the beginning definition of hot mess. It's like the spectacularly unsuccessful and disordered. It doesn't describe her at all, but she's this incredible artist, and all her pieces just have this organic, just fun, disordered life to them. And yeah, so it was kind of it described a lot of different facets of the night, but
she definitely embodied the beautiful part, the part of, peculiar fascination, and we were the spectacularly unsuccessful or disordered. That was us.
Well, it was a success, but it was a disorderly one.
It was.
Yeah.
And Bradley Copeland wasn't our only, sponsor or addition to the night. We also had Ex Voto, who did the honors of dressing and styling us for that evening.
Always crushing it.
Yeah, the only reason why we look good. And then we also had Isacks Imagery, who did a live stream for us, which we ended up putting on our YouTube and is now available on our YouTube channel in case you missed, the live stream in the night. We also have Cultural Arts Alliance, who is a major partner of ours, and we are in fact a cornerstone program of theirs. We also had Beachy Blooms, who provided some lovely flowers for us that really turned the upstairs into the secret garden party that we have always wanted.
Heck yeah.
We had Savvy Bell Photography, who captured some amazing, candid shots from that evening. Her work is going to be available on our Facebook page, or is available on our Facebook page. And you can also see it on our Instagram as well. And of course, we had our lovely host for that evening, which was Chiringo in Grayton Beach.
Love it.
We are so excited. We had, like Kristy said, a full lineup of readers this evening, and we've got all of them and more in this podcast episode. So without further ado, let's take it away.
All right. So at this point, I feel the need to share with everybody. So like I said, I am seeing a lot of new faces in the audience. And for those who don't know, I write horror, which it tends to take people by surprise, I think, especially when the theme is something like gratitude or like nostalgia. And I come in here with like, all right, here's my take on the theme. With the story pairing dinner that we did last month, I actually didn't give a heads up. I just sort of launched into it, and people were literally like shocked at the end of it. They were like, oh. Anyway, that being said, I didn't write horror tonight, just because of what happened last month. But it's not happy, don't worry. So anyway, here's my take on Hot Mess. In 8th grade, I met a girl who swore she saw the color orange every time anybody said the number 12. It was like a halo at the edge of her vision, she told us, as we bonded over a Twinks bar my mom had packed me for lunch. The cafeteria din was overwhelming, I remember, but me and my friends had sat there captivated by the newest member of our group. What about the number 13 or 14? My friend Jessica asked in hushed tones. But Lila shrugged, her blonde curls bouncing. It doesn't work like that. Because it wasn't just the color orange and the number 12. Lila's synesthesia was one of the most progressed cases that doctors had ever seen. When she said the word cake, she tasted the color blue. When she heard trumpets, she swore she saw the color red. And when she multiplied certain numbers together, it was like fireworks. A beautiful but confusing way to look at the world. Of course, there'd always been hints that she was different, even when she was a baby. Lila was the youngest of 3 girls born on the summer solstice and under a full moon. She'd been an early, easy, and silent birth. Didn't cry once, her mother told my mom after they became fast friends at the bus stop drop-off. Not a peep. In fact, she didn't utter a single word until she was almost 3 years old. My mom, a child psychologist, found that interesting, especially after Lila's mom told her how she discovered Lila drawing a pitch-perfect rendition of a red apple at the age of 1. By the time I met her, Lila's diagnosis had progressed to the point where her parents were starting to get severely worried. They moved back to Mooresville, Alabama, where both sets of grandparents lived and where everyone could keep an eye on her. But to me and my friends, she was just Lila. Moody, unusual, but most of all, interesting. There was a joke that our friend group liked to tell, especially as we got older and graduated into high school and beyond. Some people could tell the weather based on pain and bum knees. We could predict the inclement weather based on how stormy Lila's temperament was. Even as a kid, she was like a tempest brought down to earth, with her rain and clouds clearing only after she poured those feelings onto whatever canvas was closest. On the last day of high school, my friends and I gathered in Jessica's backyard for one last bonfire and soiree. Lila had come, much to our surprise, as we hadn't seen much of her recently. Because you see, at this point, Lila had been discovered for her work, known for painting wild landscapes and scenes using colors and shapes that were completely unexpected. Unfortunately, she was also known for her wild temper as well. In fact, she was renowned for it. In college, I'd visited her in New York, where she was studying under the tutelage of Trudy Benson and was getting ready to submit her work for her first gallery showing. We did the usual tour of New York, shopping, eating, drinking, but with Lila, we spent most of the time in museums and art galleries. On the last day of my trip to New York, we spent the whole day in the Frick collection. Tired, hungry, and lost, I spent an hour searching for Lila, only to find her standing stock still, weeping in front of Monet's The Garden. She was like that, a wild, colorful, beautiful thing lost in a sea of gray. We'd sort of lost touch after that, despite my best efforts, until 3 weeks ago, when I'd suddenly received an invitation out of the blue. It was to the first official gallery opening of Lila Brown's work, and the art world was going crazy. She, and like everyone else, was gearing up for the biggest art release that the art world had seen in years, when suddenly Lila Brown was reported missing. No one knew where she was or what had happened. Cops couldn't find any trace of where she'd gone, and her publicist and manager was bewildered and enraged. This wasn't a stunt she was pulling to drive up prices. She was truly missing. My mom made me go to the show. The gallery was dim, with stark white lighting throwing her pieces into relief. It was a sharp juxtaposition with the crowds outside, with people literally clawing at the door to be let in. She had painted 13 enormous pieces, the canvas stretching from practically floor to ceiling. And the pieces themselves, they were, well, beautiful and terrifying, because again, this was Lila Brown. Shapes and colors swirling into pools of red and gold and white, erupting back into figures. Herself. Lila Brown had painted herself into every single piece. She was different in each one, not always human, but still recognizable all the same. I felt tears rise in the back of my throat as I realized something, and my head suddenly grew very hot and heavy. Because you see, Lila Brown was finally happy. There, in the colors and shapes and swirls, she found out what she was always looking for, a reality that finally matched what she'd always seen. Gentle elevator music played overhead as I turned on my heel and walked out the door. Thank you.
I'm going to read the first
And
1,000
now
words
we're
of my
excited to
novel,
bring
Popular
up
Angels.
Sheila Gray Perkins.
Austin Motel, room 147. I stand in the doorway. The motel room doesn't look all that special. The lamp on the nightstand glows yellow through its crooked shade. The 2 double beds had their heads shoved against the wall like every other motel in every other town. As good of a place as any to die again. I close the door behind me and twist the deadbolt. The money bag digs into my shoulder. Drop it to the carpet. I used to think of dying as a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Something you did once. You die and that's it. You didn't do it again. Definitely not over and over again like a freak. That's what I am now, a freak. I drag the money bag across the room, into the closet, and close the door. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to think about any of it. Get cleaned up. You could sleep, die, whatever. I go to the sink and lean into the mirror, press my lips together. They turn white from the pressure, then fade back to baby blue. The circles under my eyes are the same shade. Nothing is left of the lipstick and concealer I put on in the gas station bathroom. How long ago was that? 2 days, maybe? I wish I hadn't done that. Put on makeup to cover my scariness. I'd still be walking through Georgia right now, but I could have stayed home when I got there. I wouldn't be doing whatever it is I'm doing now, running, hiding, washing the blood off. So stupid. It seemed like the right thing to do at the time. Not look like a freak, ask someone for help. I tear the paper off of a tiny bar of soap and turn the knob to warm. I pull back the stitches in my right palm. The wound is sealing closed under the pucker of thread. I drop the wrapper into the trash can and pump my hand open and closed. I could still sense the shank of the screw that pinned me to the table. Leaving blunts down with 10 pin. That seemed right, too. I scrubbed my hands, pressing hard to crush it out, the sense of the screw, the memory of what happened in the basement. It doesn't work. Nothing will. This is you now. Everything seared into your body, every bad decision, every lapse in judgment, every question you didn't ask. I yanked back the tape from the bandage on my neck. The gauze is stiff with dried sweat and ick from the wound. I inspect the slit in the mirror. It's healing into a blue line under a crosshatch of stitches. Great. I look like Frankenstein or his monster. Whatever. How does life... Don't ask that question. Not now. I unwind the rubber band from the floppy mess of my ponytail. I need a brush. I try my fingers, but they get stuck in the oil and sweat and wind-blown tangles. I lift my hair from my back. The strands at my neck are matted and caked in blood. I lean over the bowl, wet my hands, and tug at the knots in my hair. Flakes of my blood speckle the white sink. What am I supposed to do? Cut it all off? My insides sway. Tears run down my cheeks and into my mouth. Monsters don't cry. I focus on the big knot. The saltiness of the tears tastes like metal on my tongue. Why are my senses different? Nothing registers the same anymore. The broken fingers on my left hand ache from the tugging. I stop and grip the sink, pressing into the pain. Hold it together. Keep going. Conditioner will help the knots. I ease myself to the floor and strip off the boots and first layer of socks. My feet sting. I hover them above the floor. Keep going, they won't shatter. I peel back the socks next to my skin. They stick to the spots with torn blisters. Slow, I stretch out my feet. They are clammy and indented from being bound up in boots for 4 days and 1,000 miles. I stand unstable, my feet tingling, and take the torn shirt off over my head. I should burn these clothes, bandages, everything. Not that it matters. Cops already have the murder weapon in the crap from under my nails. I take the liner out of the bathroom trash can and shake it open to full size. I drop the boots in the bottom and throw in the shirt and bandages. It matters. Something has to matter. I untie the cargo pants and pull them down my hips. 6 days without a shower. Don't breathe. Don't want to know what that smells like. I stuff the pants in the bag and tie it shut, humiliating all of it. The tumble of consequences from my willful ignorance. I look down. My body doesn't look the same anymore. Even under the burns and bruising. I press my hands against my breasts. They're smaller. My abdomen isn't soft curves anymore. The outline of each muscle shows under my skin. The curves that got carried away, lost in man, all gone. My body is something else now. I'm something else now. That's it.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mary
always
Elaine Long. It is
hilarious
so
and
great
wonderful
to
Mary
see
Elaine
everybody
Long.
tonight. I see a lot of faces I recognize and a lot of new faces, which I love. Y'all are going to have a great time. This is such a fun group, and I'm so glad everybody's here. I will start and tell you that I'm a Southern humorist. I am a storyteller. I am a writer, and I am a mama, and I am a hot mess. I mean, when I read this theme for tonight, I thought, okay, they're just trying to be nice to me and do me a favor. So I'll blend in and match, because I'm definitely the one thing that is not like any other in this group. So tonight I'm going to tell y'all a story from way back in 1995. I was a new mama back then, and I had a 6-month-old little boy. And my parents were going to Gulf Shores for the weekend. And at that time, we lived in Birmingham, Alabama. And so my aunt and uncle were driving over from Texas, and my parents could not wait to show off the first grandchild. So they really wanted me to come to the beach and bring baby Jake.
Of course, yes, I would love to. Well, my parents also are incredibly overprotective, which is fabulous. That's great, and I love that. But they insisted that I fly from Birmingham to Mobile to ride in the car to Gulf Shores because they didn't want me to drive by myself in the car with the baby. My daddy says, I'll pay for the flight, just book it. Well, some of y'all may be old enough to remember, but most of y'all probably, if you want to book a flight right now, you're going to pull your phone out of your pocket and you're going to go to American Express Travel, you're going to go to Expedia. You're not going to get in your car and drive across town and sit at the desk of a travel agent while she gets on her big clunky computer and books you a flight, and that's what I had to do. So I did that, took care of it. Well, I think y'all also probably know, if you want to go anywhere with Delta, what do you have to do? You got to go through Atlanta. You can't sneeze on Delta Airlines without going through Atlanta. So here I am, new mama, 6-month-old baby, car seat, because I flew with a car seat. Everybody do what you want to. I flew with a car seat. Car seat, stroller, Birmingham Airport, fly to Atlanta, change planes, fly to Mobile, ride to the beach, have a great visit. Everything went great. I was tired. I was exasperated, but I was trying to be nice. And I was appreciative of the free airplane ticket and the help with the baby for a long weekend. That was nice. And so then we get ready to go home, and the Hot Mess Express hit right in my face. When I got off that plane in Atlanta, Georgia, with a baby who was exhausted after a long flight that took way too long to take off because we sat and we sat and we sat and we sat. The baby was hungry, and here I am, and I get off the plane, and I'm holding the baby. I got a car seat. I got a stroller. I walk out. I sat down on the floor, and I looked at the gate agent, and she looked over at me. She goes, "Honey, are you okay?" And I went, "No, ma'am, I am not. I am not okay." I said, "Look at my face. This is the face of somebody who is not going to miss her flight to Birmingham. And this is the face of somebody who's not moving from this spot. So I'm going to need you to figure that out for me." She goes, "Oh, yes, ma'am. Oh, yes, ma'am. Let me see what I can do. Let me see what I can do." 5 minutes later, I know you've all been in the airport and you've looked and you've been there at the gate and you've seen those doors over to the side that only workers come in and out, and they'll stick their head in with little headphones on. And you're like, is this like a magic door that like, why can nobody go through that door but the workers? So here comes this man in a suit out of the magic door. He walks over to me sitting on the floor, and he goes, "Are you Miss Long?" And I went, "Yes, sir." He goes, "I got you covered." Here comes another man. One gets the car seat, one gets the stroller in my bag. They help me up off the floor with the baby. They take me through the magic door. They put me in a town car on the runway, put everything in the trunk, drive me. I feel like we went underneath planes. We went all over, all around the Atlanta airport. We're just driving. Then they take me back in another magic door at another gate, bring me up, move us to first class, buckle in the car seat, hand me a glass of champagne, ask me, is there anything else I want? And I went, "No, I think I'm good now." And when I got off the plane in Birmingham and my husband picked me up, I looked at him and I said, "I will push this baby in a stroller from here to Gulf Shores before I ever get on an airplane and fly to the beach again." And that was my hot mess. So thank you.
Hello.
Now we'd like to introduce an OG
My name is Jay Lyles. I think it's
storyteller,
like my fourth
Jay
one to do
Lyles.
here for Emerald Coast Storytellers. It's always a great time, and everyone's always so enthusiastic too. So like, there's really nothing you can do but learn up here. So if it's like, there's no mistake. So if anyone ever has a story, like, come up and share a story. Like, you got a story from college or something. You're like, "Oh no, man, this one time when I was in the car." And so I have some great friends from Alabama that tell me stories all the time. And I've grown up surrounded by awesome storytellers. So if any of y'all ever want to get up and share a story, please, and everyone's going to love it. But actually this week I had a big birthday, turned 40. And it's also my mom's birthday, the same day as mine. She's here tonight. So yeah. Yeah, so she's very proud. And her gift is that she loves listening to your stories too. So I've been in the area since 2007. I've been playing music at the Red Bar since 2007, 2011, full time. And then I decided that I wanted to have a backup plan. So I went and did some more education in Mississippi. So where I grew up is where I'm from. And then while I was there, I went back to coaching. I was when I was a senior at a place called Millsaps College. I would always check in at my high school. It's about 10 minutes away. It's called Jackson Prep. And always see my head football coach and be like, hey, man, if you ever need anything, let me know. And, one day when I was a senior in college, he's like, you want to coach? And I go, I really don't remember anything besides what you taught me. Because I thought it was really rude immediately that I said, I don't remember anything that you spent all of your time on me, talking for like 3 years. That's what you taught me. And that was to run. Yeah, I can yell at people and tell them to run. Sign me up. So I was coaching 7th grade football, like just position coaches, running back, wide receivers, and then also 8th and 9th grade, and then we transitioned over to the senior high once the season was over. And then when that season was over, I went over to my high school soccer coach and said, hey, man, about to be out of a job. Like, you got anything for me? Like, football season is about to be over. And transitioned into being a soccer coach. And that was great, and then did track. But being a coach, you get approached with a lot of hot messes, a lot of them. You got parents that are hot messes. You got your players that are hot messes. You have other coaches that are hot messes. And I learned a lot about myself when getting approached with hot messes. So, because I was thinking about tonight and like, oh, what am I going to talk about? And I was like, well, I could talk about the time that like I knocked myself out in 5th grade on a mountain slope. And then my mom didn't know about it until tonight when I told her the story. And she was there. And like clean cold out, ski patrol's on the way. And then some lady's like, there's the blonde boy now. And it's like, it wasn't me. And apparently she believed me until I told her the truth when I was 40. And then I thought of another one. I was kind of like, oh, yeah, just like a few years ago, I walked into my ex-girlfriend's favorite bar like 3 months after breaking up. Has anyone done that before? Like walked into your ex's favorite bar? I thought that I had made it clear through my life without ever having one of those hot mess stories. Yep, don't ever do it. Even when you're invited by the manager because you happen to have the Airbnb with him that you just met. And he's like, dude, I'm the manager. Come up there. I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea at all. So, that's a whole hot mess story in itself. And then, but just thinking about just being a coach and going back and coaching for 7 straight years continuous. And then also the first year of being a coach when I'm 21 years old. The 7 straight years of coaching at Jackson Prep, we're expected to win, so we have to do a lot of work. And not all the kids are wanting to do all the work, but we have to encourage them to do the work. So at some point, we're going to get some pushback. I'm going to get yelled at. And then I have to respond to getting yelled at by a kid. Have you ever been cussed by a kid before? For some reason, I elicit very strong negative emotions from people sometimes. I'm very aware of it. But it's like, as long as I wasn't intentionally trying to or carelessly trying to piss somebody off, I'm like, it's okay, you're going to get over it. So, but my first year of coaching, I'm 21 years old, senior in college, and I'm coaching the junior high boys that day. And I'm like, come on, Dylan, move your feet, Dylan. Come on, Dylan, you can do it. Stay with him, Dylan. Move your feet, Dylan. It's at practice. He turns around and goes, shut the fuck up, Jay. So, and I got to see him a decade later. So I wrote this little thing kind of talking about the story and then another little thing that all goes together. Coach Jay encourages players to give all they got, up and down, this way, that way. And in his first year of coaching, a 9th grader turned around and said, shut the fuck up, Jay. Everyone was quiet. And no one said a word, but what Coach Jay said is what was heard. It was a decade later when that player saw Coach Jay, said, I apologize, and I will always remember how you treated me that day. You could have cussed me back, thrown me out of practice, or thrown me off the team, but you simply said, "No, Dylan, no. You need to play soccer." Like, what am I, like, really? Am I going to cuss him back? Like, no. And my response to him was, he was a second-year law student at the time, and he came up to me at this alumni soccer game, and he was, like, sincerely apologizing to me. I said, "But look at the gift that you gave me a decade later. Is that no matter how much pushback I get from somebody, is to stay my ground. And I really appreciate the gift that you've given me a decade later. Thank you for that." And then so going into, like, that was kind of fall going into the spring semester, and there's this other guy, and the coaches are like, "Hey, the American film teacher's gone take another job. You should be the American film teacher." And I'm like, "Okay." And I have to go talk to the principal that was my principal to convince him I'm going to be the American film teacher. And he's like, "Well, what are you qualified for?" And I was like, "Well, I grew up, my parents had video stores, and like we have access to some VHS DVDs. I'll bring them in. And I only lack like a few electives and a senior seminar class." He's like, "The job's yours." I'm like, "Great." So my first day, I'm like having to read the book too. I'm like, "Hey, at the end of the week, we're going to have a 5-question quiz, and I have to read it too. So 15 pages, 5-question quiz." And there's this guy that's a senior. I graduated his older brother, and he starts just foul mouth. He's like, "Fuck you. Nobody fucking likes you." I know. And I'm like, but he's so foul mouthed that no one's paying attention to him. He's so foul mouthed that no one's paying attention to him. And I'm repeating this story to him one time in Denver years later because we're friends now. And he has a great podcast, super, super kind. But that day, he was like, "I'm not going to take your 5-question quiz." So, and like he's one of my soccer players too, and we don't talk to each other that way. So besides the one 9th grader that told me. And then so I said, "Kip, come up here." And no one's paying him any attention. I look at him and go, "Kip, don't fuck with me in this class." And he goes, and he went and sat down, and he was my best student for the rest of the year. And I've never said this story in a microphone before because, like, I'm always so worried that, like, some teacher's going to try it. I do not recommend you try it, ever. So, but over the years, you get a bunch of pushback from students. And I remember one that she is now a sophomore at a junior college in Mississippi. Got to go see her play in a national soccer tournament as a college soccer player. She scored the goal in the semifinals in overtime to put them into the finals. So very proud of her. And she was like, "The scaredest I ever was of you was there was a senior that was yelling at you, and you sat there and you listened to her yell at you. You didn't say a word. She yelled at you, and you looked at her and you go, 'I hear you, and we're still going to do it my way.'" And I'm like, "Why were you scared of that?" She's like, "I don't know. It was just terrifying." So the last little thing that I'll close with, and the things that I practice that are good things doesn't make me a good person. I just practice things that are good. And then hope to pass them on to my players. So if you meet them one day, that you can say, that they were kind people. So to be a coach, be kind, be fair. Kindness does not always look fair, and fairness does not always look kind. Have faith. Faith that even if they don't see your kindness and fairness, one day the lessons you taught them will benefit them in their time of need. And show them how to lead and how to suffer. Lead through service, for Jesus did not come to be served, but to serve, and Jesus was the greatest leader because he knew suffering the most. And love. Through service and suffering, they learned that there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. That's the stuff heroes are made of. Then the person you coached will know what it is to be kind, to be fair, to have faith, to serve, to suffer, and to love. And maybe you'll win some games. But what matters the most is what your players give to others throughout the rest of their lives. I had a lot of great coaches, amazing teammates who practice this stuff every day. And my version of being a coach is just a reflection of the coach's teammates and everyone else I've met along the way. So, there you go. Thank y'all.
I always have struggles with the microphone. Is that good? Can you hear? Okay. So I'm Amanda
Next to
Abbott.
the mic, Amanda
I'm an
Abbott.
original local native. There's a very small percentage of us, but born and raised here. Left for a while, came back, and also have a nonprofit, Gulf Therapy, which brings people on the water for mental health and wellness. So last time I read, the only time I read, other than tonight, I guess, was about kind of the story or the events that led me to start that. And it was a very vulnerable moment. I definitely had some tears in my eyes. I think I made some other people cry. So I was really excited to hear this theme because I'm like, well, this is carefree. This will be easy. Still makes you nervous, but this one's definitely more lighthearted than the last one I read. All right. So when I heard the theme this month, I got pretty excited because I knew exactly what I was going to write about. I'm not sure what everyone else thinks about when they hear hot mess, but I automatically think of the Bay restaurant and their famous sushi roll. Every time I order it, I think, that's my roll, and I laugh a little. I laugh because I'm thinking of the other hot mess in my life, Miranda. It's hard for me to place where I first met Miranda, but I think I met her nearly a decade ago in the lively streets of Manhattan. I've definitely seen her dancing merengue with strangers in Vegas just this year, but she seems to be most prevalent in the beautiful beaches of South Walton. She's one of those people that just pops up out of nowhere, adds some excitement in your life, and then before you know it, she's gone. I know some of you have that flighty friend that one second you're hanging out with her at a bar or a party, having a blast, catching up, then she just disappears. No goodbye, just a secret exit till the next time you randomly run into her. There have been times in my life where I haven't even seen her in over a year, but we always seem to reunite at some point like no time has passed. She can pick up right where we left off and always create some wild memories. See, Miranda loves any opportunity to dance and will convince others to join her. She honestly doesn't even need music on to bust a move. She always beats to her own drum and doesn't listen to anyone for that matter. Looking outside in, Miranda seems cute and endearing, but if you try to tell her what to do, she will definitely do the exact opposite. She can negotiate her way out of or into anything and is for sure the life of the party. It's odd, though. I've only really seen her out at night. Not really sure what she does in the daytime. She will talk an entire bar into taking shots. We'll even agree to pay for them and can make a friend out of anyone. She's a fantastic wing woman and will be there with you to cheer you up, even if you're having a hard time. Donna knows this one firsthand. Over there. Miranda is not going to leave a good friend hanging. Not that it's too hard to convince her to stay for a little bit longer. She is quite the free spirit and loves to surf under a full moon, an occasional skinny dip in the Gulf, and of course loves any impromptu adventure. She even thinks e-biking at night with no headlight on 30A is a smart decision, but may have actually learned from that one as it left a literal lifelong scar. It didn't stop her, though, from continuing on the fun, bloody knees and all. Let's just say she's not always reasonable, and you have to be on your toes if you're hanging out with her. She is feisty and funny. She even thinks she can rap, and it's pretty charming most of the time. A lot of her friends have heard stories about her and try to rally her to come out, but the right people, like Sean, actually know how to reel her in. He loves her just the same, for he realizes even the responsible ones have to let loose every now and then. Over the years, I've learned to give her grace and even embrace her sometimes too, since she really is a part of me. You see, Miranda happens to be my drunk alter ego, and although her days may be over soon, maybe, just maybe, you'll be lucky enough to meet her one day.
The last story was terrifying. My daughter's about to start driving in about a year, so
Like to bring up Solange.
like I was like at the edge of my
Siri.
seat. Okay, so this is from the novel that I am writing. Made some notes for myself, so I don't know how it's gonna go. So just bear with me. So a little bit of background. The main character, Lucky, has just left an auction where she wanted to win a Frankenstein, like a Frankenstein frontispiece, so that she could pawn it and pay for her stepmother's cancer treatment. Just a little bit of background. The mop behind the door banged to the floor. "Oh, sorry," I said, spinning around and lowering my gaze to the chest floor. "I didn't mean to barge in on you." I'd come to the maid's quarters to get away from the auction, and here was the sapphire hag, encircled in a cloud of smoke on the toilet. "Stay. I was hoping to make your acquaintance. There's nothing I've got, child, you don't. My part's just more wizened, that's all. Don't be shy. Lock the door behind you." Doing as I was told, I turned to face a 1920s film noir movie set. An ultraviolet lamp above her throne highlighted her pickerel frog's complexion. She had a short, wavy, Great Gatsby hair and clumpy black mascara. Pressing the heel of the hand holding a long cigarette holder to a knee, she grunted her way to stand. A fur stole of at least 5 pelts lopped off her shoulder, black nailed claws and faces still attached. Mink, I guess, given its white markings and pointy snouts. Her seat slammed shut. "So tell me." She gun-smoked 3 perfect ringlets as she flushed the toilet. "Who won the Frankie?" "Not me," I said, turning to stone as she choo-chooed past me. Pear-cut sapphires dangled on overstretched earlobes. The sapphire hag perched herself on the vanity bench in front of the sink, large breasts hanging low to rest on her lap. "Want a cancer stick?" She asked, tipping the long cigarette holder my way. I accepted, placed it behind my ear. "Go on, girl. Do your business," she said, shooing me off. Then I'm not sure why, but I did this awkward sort of curtsy and went and sat on the throne she had just sat on. Smoke veiled her face as she spoke. "How far up that bid ladder did you go?" "Higher than you." She looked at me in the mirror. "Not to be presumptive, but shouldn't you save your money instead of wasting it on those gewgaws?" Who the fuck was she to tell me what I could and couldn't afford? I surveyed the scuff marks of my patent leather pumps, willing myself to pee, hoping against hope my piss would shut her up. "The Frankie was overvalued," she went on with a southern drawl. "Anyone with any sense can see that." She fake laughed. "Probably why the kid won it." I glanced up to meet her eye in the vanity mirror. No, actually, he didn't. An anonymous bid over the phone ended the auction. In the glass, the illusion that we were sitting side by side, was unsettling. She couldn't control that boy. Do you realize how foolish she looked? The hag tapped her cigarette holder on the side of the sink, making that butt fall into the basin, then placed another cigarette on her stick. I refused to look away from her as she attempted to coward my eyes. I took my own cigarette and smelled this familiar tobacco. When was the last time I had a cigarette in my mouth? The longing for its nicotine sting was palpable. "You were bidding against a boy." She scoffed again. "A boy." Now with the cigarette in the corner of my mouth, without breaking the stare, I stood and slid my panties back up, letting the toilet lid fall. Holding her gaze, I flushed the commode handle for longer than necessary. Then I walked over to the sink beside her, washed my hands with the cigarette still clamped between my lips, opened my palm to her, and asked, "Lighter?" She reached into her bra strap and pulled out a tarnished lighter. As I flicked the light box for its flame, she pointed her cigarette wand at me and said, "You've got a strong aura." I sucked the Marlboro, appreciating the slow burn of tobacco fibers. Lots has happened to you, child, her voice crackled. I noticed the ruby eyes of a silver snake coiled on her vintage cigarette holder. With a cigarette in my hand, I wrapped my left arm around myself. Took a drag. We were facing each other now. Holding the cigarette between two fingers, I flicked at my right nail thumb, exhaled, raised my brows and mocked, yeah? She puckered her lips, moved her head up and down slowly. Tributaries of hot pink lipstick rivered her grooved lips. That mama of yours was a real piece of work, wasn't she? I shrugged, bit my thumbnail. You're scared, worried things won't turn out the way you hoped, she said, sucking her cigarette. You Catholics. Hardly, I chuckled, making my way towards the Zoe. Science is my religion. I took another puff. My cold sore tingled. I tongued the turtle roof of my mouth. Was she referring to the contract with MIT? You old crone, I smiled. Things always have a way of working out for me. Then I pinched my cigarette, stuck out my tongue, and pressed the cherry to its tip. There it was, that sting, that sizzle. The hag took a drag. I kept the embers on my tongue, forcing her to hold her smoke. A game of chicken. I was back to being that girl in the locker room in a loose hand-me-down swimsuit, dripping wet in front of my coach, singeing my taste buds, destroying the pleasure of eating to lose weight. I could endure any amount of pain to get that gold. With a crooked smile, she coughed, ha, studying me with her cataract eyes. Ha, I mimicked louder, then ground the cigarette into the basin and left her there.
Hi, I'm Stacy. And just like a lot of other people here, I have been very
And now
inspired
we
by
have
these nights and
Stacy
listening to everybody
Boudreaux.
else read. And so I've written, as a result of that, a lot of poetry. And that's what I planned on reading tonight. But I don't have a working printer, and I went to UPS to print it. And I sent the wrong file accidentally. And so I did print out what I originally was going to read, but I tossed it, and I'm just going to read what printed. Which is actually a whole book on being a hot mess. My kids like me to tell stories, so I tell them things, but I've always kind of kept a lot of the hot mess details to myself. And I decided that I just want to let all of it out. So I started writing about a month ago, all the stories that I can remember about getting into trouble. And so I'm going to read you a little bit of the intro to the book that I'm writing for them, and then I never thought I'd share this with anybody else but them, but I'm going to go ahead and share a chapter with you guys. I have spent the last, I can't really see up here. I've spent the last 10 years of my life trying to dig my way out of the dirt that I buried myself under throughout all of the years that came before them. With every grain comes a story and a little piece of what got me to here and now. A lot of really fun times, a ton of wild choices, and more times than I can count that I probably shouldn't have survived. At least I should have had more trouble staying out of trouble. But fortunately, here I am, and I find that the older I get, the more I want to know about the other side of my own parents, my grandparents, and pretty much anybody that I love the most. I know the version of them and who they were from the time and age that I was old enough to get to pay attention, but what came before that? What are all of their wildest, craziest, shouldn't have survived stories? So this chapter is titled Unlicensed to Drive, and these are all true stories. Hunter was a lifesaver my first couple of years of high school. He won both of my parents over with the same charm that he used to hook me. I was grateful for it because I was allowed to forego the bus ride and go to and from school with him every single day. It felt like I was winning the lottery back then. Hunter was hilarious and very mischievous. He babysat for my brothers when I couldn't and admitted to me later that he would use that time babysitting to rummage through my room and my drawers and take a peek at all of my underwear. He also enjoyed teaching my 9-year-old twin brothers very vulgar, i.e. awesome, jokes. My personal favorite joke was the elephant trick, although I could never steal that one because you had to be of the male variety to make it work. It's an easy trick otherwise. You turn the pockets of your pants inside out to make the ears, you unzip them, and then you dig for the trunk. Add some sound effects for extra shock factor. My brothers loved that trick. I can't remember how long it took, but eventually Hunter would let me drive his car on back roads on the way home from school to practice. My friend Tiffany Giesel had been getting plenty of practice because she had a learner's permit already, because she had an earlier birthday than the rest of us. Somehow we convinced Hunter to let us borrow his car and skip school to go on an adventure to the Fort Walton Beach Mall. She found me midday and shook the keys. So I got busy forging our notes to check out of school, and off we went. The mall was a 30-minute drive from Niceville. It's a very long way to go for somebody without a driver's license and with almost zero experience on the road, but I don't think I even had a single thought like that. I was invincible, and also I really wanted to go to the mall. So our first stop was for gas. We had at least $4 in lunch money between the two of us, and back then that could put plenty of gas in the car. We pulled into the station around the corner from the high school and got out to pump. We realized that neither of us knew how. We had the basics. We popped the gas cover, we unscrewed it, we put the pump in, but no gas would come out. We had to go inside and ask the attendant what was wrong with the pump. It wasn't working. She said, "Honey, you got to lift the handle to engage." That's when we should have just cut our losses and turned around and gone back to the school, or at least reconsidered the long drive we had to get to the mall, but we did not. I remember a very colorful ride to the mall that day. It was a joint effort in learning how to merge, to get the timing right for all of the switching lanes, and to remember our blinkers. I don't even think we went into the mall that day. I believe we just sat in the parking lot. It was just about the thrill of knowing that we could get there. We eventually made it back to the school, and we found Hunter, and we had his car all in one piece. That rendezvous built some trust in him, and he ended up letting me borrow his car a few times. I have such fond memories of my friendship with Hunter, despite him being a very perverted panty snatcher.
So I was going to bail tonight because I didn't have anything specifically prepared for this fabulous theme, although lots of material in my head for it. But I felt so inspired by the energy in this room and everybody sharing their stories. But I pulled something out of my phone. And I just wanted to say I appreciate how much bravery it takes to come up here. I've written 22 novels. I've done a lot of public speaking. I've been on public television and national television, and I'm still like shaky and nervous. So I appreciate like all the gumption it takes to get up here and tell your story. So I'm just going to read a chapter 1 of a story that I've been kind of playing with. It's inspired by my recent trip to Iceland, and wasn't specifically written for Hot Mess in mind, but any chapter 1 really is about a hot mess, right? Trying to get into their hero's journey, right? So the title of the story is called The King's Daughter, and this is written from the male point of view, which was kind of a new endeavor for me for a chapter 1. The Hillmere stands tall among its neighbors, a spear thick as a city block, piercing the New York City skyline. From where I sit on the 52nd floor, the atmosphere is a little less severe. Frederick Dary's desk is monstrous, but so is his office. The space is softened with strategically placed office plants, and the walls are adorned with ambiguous art. The billowing swaths of grayscale watercolor paintings remind me of everything between stormy seas and the perils of toilet training a puppy. Frederick, by contrast, is all clean lines, thanks to his trim build and impeccable tailor. His figure hovers by the walls of windows like a rough ink sketch against the bland canvas of the overcast sky, a king admiring his kingdom. The kingdom, in this case, happens to be about $15 billion worth of real estate on the island of Manhattan, the scope of which has made him one of the most successful billionaires in the country. Have you heard of Odell? He lifts a low ball of his favorite bourbon to his lips. I glance at my watch. It's just past noon. The island in the North Atlantic you couldn't pay me to visit on the warmest summer day? Yes, I've heard of it. Frederick turns enough to show me his shadowed smirk. The weather can be temperamental, but its beauty is unrivaled. I hold his gaze, unsure of how this topic warrants attention, ahead of the dozen other matters we should be discussing. As VP of development of his company, I'm tasked with pinning him down just long enough to get the information I need to keep the empire running smoothly. This usually accounts for an hour or so of his day. Anything beyond that gets cumbersome, and I'm likely to see the testier side of him, which is the side most people know. I clear my throat, eager to move on. We're ready to start pre-selling the penthouses at the residences. I just need your approval. The penthouses at One West won't be ready for another year, he says. There's time. I have some friends I'll want to reach out to first. That's fine, but the pre-sales would make negotiations with the bank go over better if there are any issues with the timeline. There won't be any issues with the timeline, Gage, because I've put you in charge, and you always deliver for me. Isn't that right? He turns, and I answer with a compulsory nod. He's not wrong. I always deliver, at the cost of my sleep, my sanity, and my health. In today's climate of self-care and considerations for mental health, this degree of self-sacrifice is largely frowned upon. But he's Frederick Dari, and I've sacrificed sleep, sanity, and health for more days than I can count to earn a place right here, so I can't exactly just stop now that a wildly successful real estate baron has taken me under his wing. Frederick's approaching figure grows larger on the black, reflective surface of his desk, disappearing as he takes his seat soundlessly. I want to build a hotel. I push down a wave of impatience and remind myself that Frederick's sporadic ideas more often than not pay great dividends. One might think being a billionaire would make for a complicated life, but Frederick cruises through his days in a manner not unlike a rousing game of Monopoly, where he's almost always the winner. Buy the block, throw up hotels, buy the debt on the losers, pass go, and collect $200 million. I set down my pen and fold my hands on my lap, resigned to putting this morning's agenda to the side for the time being. Did you have a borough in mind? Fells Cove. I frown. Never heard of it. It's on the west coast of Adel. Not exactly a bustling town, but there are enough resources to make it not a complete nightmare to pull it off. Right. It's an island. So is Manhattan. I answer with a rough laugh. Odell's nearly 800 miles off the coast. It's, a 4-hour flight? No idea how long by boat or barge, but we can assume it's substantial. What part of this doesn't sound like a nightmare to you? It's ambitious, he says. I agree. But what a feat it would be. A feat, I say, is a multi-billion-dollar 30-acre mega residential development on the Upper West Side. Hotels are hardly the cornerstone of your empire. The gray whiskers of his short beard crinkle into a smile. Wealth is in ideas, not money. Richard Collier. I reply, all sins have their origin in a sense of inferiority, otherwise called ambition. I tap my pen tip against my notepad. Cesare Pavese. He narrows his eyes. Is that supposed to hurt my feelings? This feels like a vanity project. It's my job to talk you out of those. He leans back into his chair with a sigh. All work and no play makes Gage Gregor a dull boy. When's the last time you had a vacation? I flip through my mental calendar and come up short of anything that felt like restorative downtime. Does a weekend in the Hamptons with Amelia count? A couple months ago, I guess. His eyes warm at the mention of her name. As if keeping him happy at work wasn't enough, I somehow managed to make my life even more complicated by falling in love with his daughter. Amelia, how is she? I haven't seen her in a while. Good, yeah, really good. You know, she stays busy. So busy we have our assistants schedule dinner dates for our calendars, but we make it work. She's smart and charismatic, and we have the big things in common. Mainly living up to her father's expectations and generally keeping up appearances. For her, it's social. For me, it's professional. We both do our part, but somehow doing it together makes it a little more bearable. You're due for a proper trip, I suppose, he says. A honeymoon, maybe? His eyebrow quirks up. All my organs seem to plummet through my insides at once. Frederick and I have a rapport. Professionally, I have substantially more room to challenge him and maneuver. When it comes to Amelia, the rules are different. Not because he's ever said so, but because I just know. Money is expendable. Property, projects. I am expendable. Amelia's happiness is not. And now that's largely on me, which is why I've lost the power of speech. Amelia and I have danced around the topic of marriage, joking about the social implications of such an event. It's page 6 material, no doubt. It would be an absolute spectacle, and she'd enjoy that far more than I would. But it always seems like a faraway thing, something to think about after. He locks his gaze with mine. I need to say something. He laughs. It's a rich, heavy sound that carries through the room. Surely you've talked about it. I swallow hard and nod. His smile fades a fraction. It feels like a shift so subtle only someone like me would notice, someone who's hyper-tuned into this one man's whims and wants. He nods. Odell is the perfect place to slow down then. You can bring Amelia. Spend some real time together without all the cameras and such. Take a break from the city. My throat is dry. How can I say no? I can't, but Amelia might be able to. Do you think she'll like it there? Frederick shrugs. There's nothing wrong with a little adventure. His eyes are glittering, and his smirk is too boyish for his age. I'll do my best. The second the words leave my lips, I realize I've committed. Just like that, he's corralled me into this harebrained scheme that maybe he thought up this morning over his morning stroll on the treadmill. Now my whole life is about to be upended, which maybe isn't ideal for him either. Who will oversee matters here? I say. Do what you can remotely. Appoint someone else on the team to be your eyes on the ground here. I nod swiftly, right. My problem. This could take a while. It'll take as long as it's going to take. And when you get back, he takes another sip of his liquor, exhaling softly. You will have my blessing to marry Amelia. More joy riding of my insides. A head-first free fall straight into what the fuck is happening right now. Thank you, I rasp. My mouth has become a barren desert, home to tumbleweed and half-truths. I wonder if he can tell. Thanks.
And now, a message from our sponsor.
At Beachy Blooms, their mission is simple: to provide you with a unique bouquet experience handpicked by you. If you're lucky enough to call the Emerald Coast home, look for their flower cart at local farmers markets, special events, and pop-up venues, or hit them up for personal delivery. Visit beachyblooms38.com to learn more. And now, back to our show.
Yeah, hot mess, what a term. I had a couple poems that I was going to bring, but
next to the mic,
then I decided to pull this book out that I published like 10,000 years ago, that I wrote mostly when I was like a late teenager, maybe my early 20s, and like fucking full hot mess for 15 years or whatever. I'm not going to read the poems that are like hot messes within themselves, because like my ego won't let me. They're just so cringy and like 15 years old. But a couple of them I quite like. So this poem's called Poem for Ben Potter, who's a great friend and a filmmaker. You'll be hearing his name in the next 20 years. So deep is my passion for rolling down hills and feeling pain in my arm and my side and having glass leave my feet that when my brother drinks and never vomits, it brings me back to the knoll on Stony Hill. His mom lives in the constant landscape of a studio. His dad's writing folk songs about mariners lost in cups and ocean green mirages. His sister's striding Ivy League halls with him in tow while I'm kicking liquid habits flowered from the righteous seeds of a roustabout kick around. Something obscene would be welcomed. I'm sick of filth grimed with past obsessions and forced directions on Wednesday nights. On Stony Hill, loam is soothing like the cawing of the gull or mornings. I'm going to be lonely and shoeless and blind and roll down hills before I tumble back into dust. Thanks. I'm also just like randomly picking these poems right now. Exactly, just kind of picking the ones that don't seem foolish. This is called Poem from a Window. I also literally haven't looked at these poems in, I don't know, a decade maybe, or no, less than a decade, but 6 or 7 years. This is called Poem from a Window, I guess. Who cries in the night, waking rabbits to scurry from settled bed? Underbrush, little children wakey-eyed and squawking to spring towards mother. Her burden of burrow paid at tree's root and nesting nuzzled younglings back to slumber. On the window reflects, like clouds in the morning, travels forgotten in feet warmed by carpets and babies crying, wrapped in cribbed blankets. A distant cawing of oceans, clouds of milk like memories passing with time. Thank you. This is called A Poem for Rebecca, which is only funny because I've written 100 or more poems for Rebecca, so this clearly must be the first one. And it's very short, but I published this book right when I started dating my partner, who I've been with for, I say 10 years, but I don't think it's been 9 yet. I think it's 9 years, yeah. Which is very funny to even see this poem. It's like it's nostalgia on a page. But again, it's very short, called A Poem for Rebecca. We listen to the moon, which sings only half in the sky. I wonder, does the pine also ache to be bristled by the wind? Thank you. Oh, I really like this one, y'all. I think I'll end with that one. I'm going to read one that I wrote recently, just because, again, like my ego has to be, pet a little bit. This is something I've written really recently. I haven't really read it much, so I might fumble around here. Actually, cheers, you guys. I'm just going to take a sip of it. I haven't had a thing to do for ages. I haven't been excited, save for swell or the smile of my lover. This isn't a confession nor some cry for substance. This is an attempt to consolidate honest need and those which have been forced to us with the weight of societal intent, like packing old keepsakes into a box or writing out dreams in a little notebook, swirling them in ink for existence. And when I find them years later, I'll confuse them with memory, finding certainty in their wisdom. Somewhere there is a vision from a dune with a perfect rising sun, and a flock of gulls scatters from the beach, cawing their immediate flexibility, adding motion to the scene. In some other world, I am there watching, hoping for an insight, wishing to be placed into the mindset of absorption, waiting for that point the world wants to make. In truth, I hope I never make a real connection. Not those human ones, not those little sparks of passion. I fear the greater bonds, those consequences which run parallel with history and leave their clues in the semiotic philosophies of language and dynasty. That's fucking terrifying. But I've never feared the death of a god, nor the inevitable erasure of language in the wildfire tracings of conquest through time. I fear the certainty of identity, the absolutism of goodness, which is often confused with the sweet taste of personal experience. We've never been described by the workings of our thoughts, only our effect on others. What allows the death of a god but the conclusion of their story told one last time? When the last worshiper dies, wrapped in gossamer, the aged vines of their forgotten dominion, and rises up into the great nothing, which is the only constant. It's then that their God finally exists, made real in their coming to the void and its degradation, the consumption of matter. I matter. You matter. Take your time. Nothing else exists, not even time. Somewhere there are lovers passing silent through a hug, with the sun setting in the distance, uncaring of every war fought, for every myth been made of its rising, setting, and allowing heat. How much have we all learned through the tender thoughtlessness of embrace? The whispering tumbles at midnight or sunrise, thumbing secret skin akimbo, entwined. I haven't had a thing to do for ages, but love is there, and I've forgotten now. I'm so foolish. If you have it, love is there. Thank you. Thank you. I'm just gonna say I fucking love this poem. I haven't written or read it. It's like I didn't write this, but I wrote it a lifetime or two ago. I'm originally from East Hampton, New York. I went to college in Boulder, Colorado, at a really small university called Naropa University. It's got one of the. I met so many poets there. It's unbelievable. I literally had a teacher tell me to drop out of school because he was like, "You're wasting your time here. Go out and chop wood and fucking write." And I was like, "Oh, this is the greatest university in the world." He was right too. Like, I wasted a lot of money there. And I also published this book when I was there, and I was like failing classes. So I was like, "What the fuck am I doing here?" But anyway, this is called "Poem for East Hampton, New York" from Boulder, Colorado. Unhorsed by fallen branches, slipping into creeks like rocks, kissing sands with picnic blankets and sunshine and calm. The white gull screams of the air and sea and earth. Wind rustles feathers, licking branches down below. Dunes and bushes hiding rabbits and children and foxes. In the meadow by the sea are deer eating grass, not noticing me or hearing. Thank you.
So I'm not as tall as some people are. All right, nothing pisses me off more than to be in a restaurant and have mood lighting and then some asshat at the table turns on. But I can't see a freaking thing up here, so I'm sorry, folks. I'm going to do this. The other part of my disclaimer, for those of you who don't know me, I am totally terrified. How's this? I'm totally terrified of all of you, but that's not why I'm shaking. I have a tremor. So, okay. Here we go. Ready. All right, this one is called 23 and Me and You and Them. And I started it in our last workshop and then pulled it out today and did some editing on it, which is why I literally have to read it. For those of you, like you, Cindy, who know my family, this is fictionalized, so, don't go there. As a gift, I received the 23andMe genetic testing kit. Wow, I thought, perfect. Now I would be able to lay the blame for my frizzy hair and short stature on some ancestor that handed it down to me. I was quick to spit in the little vial and send my saliva on its merry way for analysis. When I told my soul sibling, my sister, what I had done, she was appalled. "What if you find out something you don't want to know?" she asked. "Like what? If I have some dreaded genetic disease and only a few months to live, I want to make life miserable for a whole list of people, then die before they can sue me or have me killed." "Not that," my sister replied, dismissing the possibility of some exotic genetic disease that, oh yes, we would likely have shared. "What if you find out we have a sibling somewhere?" I hadn't really considered that possibility. Like most people, deep in my heart, I didn't believe my parents actually had sex to produce me. My mom and dad, them, screwing around? That's a whole new dimension of my parents I hadn't considered. Could I have a brother or sister plus cousins once or twice removed about whom I had never heard? Interesting. The cousins I knew were all very intimidating. Most of my family is illustrious in some extremely creative way that has made them very wealthy. It might be nice to find a loser or two in the haystack, so to speak. My sister continued, you know, that's what happened to Gary, the first one, not the second one. I understood her meaning. Gary, the first one, was her husband twice removed, that is to say her first husband. She's now on number 3, also named Gary for maximum confusion. We called them Gary the first one and Gary the second one for clarification. If she moves on to husband number 4, she's agreed that he will have a different name. He found out that he had a sister no one knew about. She lowered her voice. We were on a cell phone, so what was the point of whispering? Even as she said it, people in Asia were likely checking top secret digital files to determine which husband she meant. I can't say it was surprising to learn that Gary the first one had a sibling that no one knew about. Okay, someone must have known about her, but that particular genetic group did not include his mother. Gary the first one's father slept around. Everyone in our church knew, even if they didn't really know. Gary the first one apple did not fall far from the paternal family tree. He became husband history for the same sort of extracurricular spreading of genetic material outside his wedding vows as had his dad. And the worst part, my sister had warmed to the subject now, was that Gary the first one and I went to his prom and she was there and we had no idea at the time. I exclaimed, whoa, that's incredible. Genetic testing can reveal other people who were at your prom to whom you might be related? You are not taking this seriously, my sister said in her best illustrious physician voice. Yes, she's illustrious too. I was the only family member thus far discovered without the illustrious gene. It had apparently spun off my double helix at some point. I protested. I think it would be interesting to discover a sibling somewhere. It would have been totally possible. Our parents were in their 30s and 40s when we were born. Maybe they had led a more exotic life prior to having 2 little girls to raise. And I wasn't at all concerned about 23andMe telling me that I had been at my prom with an unknown sibling. My nerdy high school voted not to have a prom. Instead, we had a protest dance around an elderly tree on the school grounds slated to be chopped down. On a Friday afternoon, we gathered for our Save the Tree dance. Somebody's garage band repeatedly played the same 3 songs they knew. We didn't wear prom attire. Our jeans and T-shirts were part of our protest against the injustice of our privileged lives as we knew them. Our righteous indignation and sense that we had saved the tree left us with a real high, maintained by other items imbibed behind the gym. Come Monday morning, we found that the powers that be had chopped down the tree over the weekend when the school was vacant. That possibility had never occurred to us. We were very sophisticated thinkers. My sister mused, maybe we will find out we are really 1/16th Native American princesses. She was repeating a story that my mother's side of the family had often told about our great-great-grandmother being Native American royalty. I really doubt it, I said. As elementary school-age kids, we had postulated that genetics would prove our claim to, well, whatever Native American princesses could claim. On TV, all Native Americans had long black hair. We reasoned that if we could discover our maternal grandmother's original hair color, it would be incontrovertible proof. She wore her hair long and straight, which was solid evidence of our Native American heritage as far as we were concerned. My grandmother wouldn't tell us her original hair color. Maybe she had forgotten over the decades of Lady Clairol, so that avenue of exploration was a dead end. My DNA must have been very complex, as it took 23andMe quite a while to produce results. It would have been logical for my genes to stump them, as my father was from Germany and my mother was from Union, Mississippi. I was quite likely a genetic train wreck with a side order of Native American princess. The day arrived when I received the results. Boring, boring, boring. 50.1% of my mother's heritage and 49.9% of my father's. No Native American princess genes. No surprise siblings. Boring, boring, boring. The report said some other information I considered useless. I am most likely to wake up around 7 a.m. Well, duh, that's when the dog lets me know it's time to let him out or clean up the consequences. I also had the ability to smell asparagus in urine. Anyone have asparagus for dinner? What am I supposed to do with that information? One item of interest did pop up in the report. My heritage did not spring from the woman in Africa who 30,000 or so years ago started most of civilization as we know it. The mother of all mothers. My multiple greats-grandmother was not part of the village, but apparently a chick on the side outside of the village somewhere. 23andMe provided the opportunity to share my information with others who had used the service and shared a percentage of genes with me. No surprises there either. Same cohort of overachievers I already knew, but I gave permission to be contacted by people more genetically distant. Turns out I must be a genetic wallflower. I only heard from 2 possible undiscovered relatives. One was Cleo, who has the same name as a friend's cat. It's a little scary if that ill-tempered cat and I share genes. The other one was someone named Deng, D-E-N-G. It seemed unlikely he hailed from Mississippi or from Germany. I mentioned this newfound 3rd or 4th cousin to my son, who has inherited the know-it-all gene from his father. He was quick to point out I was mispronouncing my possible relative's name. It's Dung, he corrected me. Right. No need to further explore the family tree.
And now I'd like to bring up my storyteller partner in crime, Kristy Holditch.
How's it going, guys? I'm using my trusty phone today in true hot mess form. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, cool. So yeah, one of my favorite things about Emerald Coast Storytellers is just getting, storytellers out, just every shape, size. We got 22 novels from the amazing Meredith Wild, and people just starting out and everywhere in between. But when I thought of hot mess, I thought of my own writing journey, which is very hot mess. As writers, we like to kick things off thinking like, okay, I'm going to be published within the year and all the things. And clearly that hasn't happened, but we're on our way. And so for this one, I pulled a very early chapter from the novel I've been working on for some time now, but coming back to it. And at our last writers' night, we were talking I think there's a reason why certain things take as long as they do, because they just get infused with so much more life experience. And there's already things that I'm like, oh, wow, I can, now I'm growing a baby. I can work that in there and all the things. So yeah, my goal is published by 30, pregnant by 30 is pretty awesome too. So this is from my novel to be eventually, Just Passing Through. Love you too. At a top speed of 79 miles per hour, the California Zephyr train takes 35 hours to get from Denver, Colorado to Emeryville, California. If I was any decent at math, I wouldn't be using what little battery life remained of my phone to Google the breakdown of this particular measurement of time. But as a writer, and as the coin flip tends to go, math was never really my strong suit. Plus, I could use the distraction, being that I was just barely 30 minutes into the journey. The first 29 of those being spent the same way most people spend their entire lives, staring blankly ahead, hoping to find the thing we all seem to be searching for. Half the time, I'm convinced we ourselves don't even know what it is, this thing we one day hope to find. If we're lonely, we tell ourselves it's love we're missing. If we're lost, we look for meaning, some semblance of self, identity. Flat out broken, we're longing for something much bigger than us, purpose. Or perhaps some quick and easy fix that will convince ourselves we're whole again, even if it's a lie. As for me in the tumultuous landscape of my current reality, I suppose it's a rather lovely combination of all three. Which brings me here, on a westbound train heading nowhere and everywhere. It seems to be trudging along rather slowly in the grand scheme of things, especially when a few mindless Google searches tell me things like this, that the Earth itself spins at roughly 1,000 miles per hour. A human heart beats at 60 to 100 beats per minute. And even in the midst of these miracles, here I am counting down the seconds, silently hoping they'll add up to something. Because this gaping thing inside me finally has me convinced there has to be something more than just this. So far, of course, no luck. Though thanks to my calculations, aka Google, it seems for the first time in a long time, I actually have something going for me. 35 hours, 2,100 minutes, and 126,000 seconds. Time where complete strangers come together with absolutely nothing in common. Not the past we're running from, not the future we convince ourselves is slipping through our fingertips. Not the number in our bank accounts that somehow dictates it all. Nor our hopes, dreams, and deep dark secrets. Nothing but 35 hours, 2,100 minutes, 126,000 seconds. That and a train ticket. As I hold on to my own, my grip a little too tight, I take in what will be my temporary home for the voyage to come. For the price, you'd think the space would be pristine. The carpet, some kind of velvet green, converging into mahogany walls. Golden drapes falling just so, and interspersed leather chairs cradling the kind of people you see on travel brochures. Well-dressed families laughing over card games, and beaming couples with pearly white grins, tapping their champagne glasses in some breezy and therefore annoying manner. But here in the dimly lit observation car, the time on my near-dead phone showing close to midnight, I see none of that. Instead, a drab hodgepodge of grays and dark blues. Or is it all grays? I find it hard to tell under the harsh fluorescent light flickering from a broken ceiling fixture. One that oddly and unfortunately enough reminds me of my old cubicle back in Denver. If we're looking on the bright side here, I guess that makes two things I have going for me. Time, and the fact that I never have to step foot in that place again. As for the people around me, there is no laughter or champagne clinks. No friendly staff coming to assist with the patrons' every beck and call. Just the stale air of snoring travelers and what remains of the scattered commuters fighting the day's end, just as the day before. Staring blindly into the pages of a book, some form of technology, or the underside of their eyelids. For me, it's my own thoughts I'm fighting, and with it, I've already wished the slim chance of a good night's sleep goodbye. Restless fingertips take its place, my mind temporarily at bay, focusing on the task of folding the corners of my ticket again and again, as if grooming a hangnail. Its folds vaguely taking the shape of one of those poorly made origami fortune tellers from when I was a kid. Each corner revealing fortunes like you'll be rich, you'll be famous, you'll fall in love, you'll be happy. But this particular piece of paper makes no such promises, only a place, a date, a departure time, and two words currently deciding my fate for me, one way. And so what else is there to do but glance out the window of the one-way train that will take me far away from my first failed attempt at this thing called life. Thank you. Next up, we're so excited to bring our featured storyteller of the evening, Bradley Copeland. Bradley Copeland is a prolific 25-year-old artist living in Santa Rosa Beach, Florida, with an inventory amassing over 600 pieces and growing rapidly. Bradley's passion for art has existed for as long as she can remember. The artist graduated from Auburn University in 2018 with a bachelor's degree in art, but it wasn't until the end of her time in college that she realized her relationship with art was so much more than mere amusement. It was completely indispensable.
After graduating from college, Bradley apprenticed under an Alabama artist and moved to Florida's Panhandle a year later in 2020. Here, Bradley's passion and career flourished. She has since opened her own studio and gallery, held several solo and group shows, and was featured on the cover of Emerald Coast magazine. The up-and-coming artist's work can be found in several galleries across the Southeast, including her own studio and gallery where she obsessively paints, inspired by everything around her. Bradley considers art to be her religion, her compass, and her greatest love.
Hi. All right, let's all clap again for everyone who shared today, because this is nerve-wracking. And yeah, that takes a lot of guts to get up here and share your stories and be vulnerable. Can everyone actually hear me now that I'm speaking into the mic? Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone so much for being here today, and thank you, Kristy and Ali, for hosting me and for asking me to be the special guest. I'm totally honored with the lineup that came before me. I feel just so flattered to be here and to share with you guys. And I'm in the middle of taking my jacket off and got distracted. Yeah, I just wanted to tell you guys about my life. This theme of hot mess could not be more appropriate for me. I have learned throughout the course of my life to really embrace my hot messness. And my hot messness, I guess, is what led me into my art career too, which I'm so grateful for. So I've always loved art ever since I was little. I've been coloring and painting and drawing since I could hold things in my hands. And I never really allowed myself to dream to become an artist. That was about as realistic as becoming a princess to me growing up. It seemed something so far away and almost silly to have that kind of goal in mind, but I knew I would always be making art on the side of whatever else, which I did all throughout school as a young child, throughout college, and I hopped around every single artsy career field-ish without fully committing to art until my second to last semester at college, and I still at that point never thought that I could ever be a full-time artist or making any money off of my art. That was something I figured people do when life settles down or is almost over, if ever, if you're lucky enough, and then if you're really lucky, you're famous after you're dead, you know? So that's what I thought artists were. And so I moved here sometime after college, and I also spent the whole first chunk of my life up until about 3 years ago extremely anxious, extremely dissociated, extremely out of touch with myself, and painting was always an escape for me, and I never realized how much of an escape or how much I leaned on it to escape the anxieties of my own world. And then I moved here. I was working part-time at a boutique with several lovely ladies in here that I'm still dear friends with. And Ann Hunter Gallery asked me if I would have a solo show. So this was like the first opportunity of anything artsy related that it was just the first opportunity I had with my art to make something of it. So I took a whole month off of work at the boutique that I worked at, and I saved up money. I painted just for a whole month, and 2 days before I was supposed to install for this show, I spilled a pot of boiling water on myself. I had second and third degree burns on 20% of my body. I couldn't walk. I couldn't work. I was supposed to go back to work at the boutique. I couldn't go back then, and I couldn't install for my show either. And COVID happened right after that too. So as soon as my stuff got up, no one could gather and come see it. The boutique that I worked at that I couldn't walk around to go back to work at was now closed before COVID. So I had just got my new studio space. I was completely out of money, out of funds, and I had no idea what I was going to do. And my only option really became to paint. I had a few commissions lined up from a family that knew me well, and I just tried selling the stuff that I had made for this show that no one could go to, and I tried painting all the commissions that I had let pile up from before, and painting was the only option I had to make money. And it was also the only option I had to heal too. I started journaling obsessively during that time in my life and painting to heal. And I discovered just so much about myself and about life. I say this all the time, but I learned how to trust canvas before I ever learned how to trust myself or the world around me. That's where I learned faith and trust, and everything happens for a reason. It was on canvas first, because something I would do to pull myself out of these anxious ruts that I was in was just to make a mess on canvas, because everyone has probably tried to paint something in here before, and you were probably intimidated when you first started. That happens to me still all the time. One way to get over that, and something I really started to lean on then, was just making a mess, scribbling and playing and enjoying the process of things rather than the final product, not putting any pressure on what this piece was going to turn into, instead just let the piece become. And in that process of learning how to trust the paint, I learned how to apply that to trusting myself and trusting my life. And it was soon after that, painting really saved me. Painting and journaling like completely saved my life then, because not only was I burnt and out of money, and the world is on fire too with COVID and everything, but my dog was diagnosed with cancer at the time. So that was a whole other chapter of just emotionally, financially, mentally draining. And it was a lot of hard stuff. That was probably like the worst and the best period of my life, because it was the rock bottom that I used to kind of catapult myself off of. But I wouldn't have been able to make any of the transformation from within myself without painting, without journaling. And soon after that, I had already put in paperwork to volunteer at the Walton Correctional Institution, where I teach these art classes to men in prison. And I never thought that I would be able to teach them stuff with my art. I didn't think that my art would be any part of me helping there. I just wanted to help there. I've always been really passionate about reforming prison systems. I just don't think there's a lot of opportunity for light in healing, where in a place where healing is so necessary. So I didn't know how I was going to provide that, but I was just going to do whatever anyone told the volunteers to do. And COVID happened. Prisons shut down. I burnt to a crisp. My life fell apart. And soon after that, after I had worked myself out of everything, with the journals, with my paintings, Cultural Art Alliance and some other volunteers from the prison reached out to me and said that they were going to start a program. And since I had already been involved before, they wanted me to be the teacher for it. And I was like, great, I got things to teach now. I can actually help some people learn some things about themselves through painting. So that it's become the most rewarding thing for me, because I think I get more out of it than they get out of it. Worst case scenario, they get a break from prison and they have some free time to paint and play with colors, which is more joyful than anything else that goes on in there, just about. And best case scenario, which I've seen happen in so many of them, they take away these lessons and metaphors that I help them discover really within themselves. So it helps me reaffirm everything that I've come to learn, and it's basically therapy too. I'm vulnerable with them to encourage them to be vulnerable with me, and it just is like a big group therapy session. That it's also really funny because I'm such a hermit too. I stay in my studio and maybe go to Mary Ellen's studio. It's like my outing. Yeah, and the guys in the prison will tell me about TV shows or music or things that are going on right now. I'm like, y'all are my connection to the outside. Yeah, but it was the best things fell apart so that even better things could fall together for me. So I really learning how to trust the process of life, trusting the process of paint. I don't know where I would be without that. Scary to think about. But that's pretty much my story. I don't think I have too much else to share. I would love to take some questions, so if anybody has any.
Live storytelling episode from our March open mic night at Chiringo in Grayton Beach. Thank you again to all of our storytellers and attendees, our sponsors, and everyone else that just continues to support. Be sure and check back every other Wednesday for a new episode. Thank you for listening, storytellers. Wherever you are on your journey and whatever brought you here, we encourage you to tell your story. Tell lots of stories. Now get out there and find your stage.
The Emerald Coast Storytellers podcast is produced in partnership with Sowell House, whose mission is to house creative culture by supporting the individuals who shape it.
Follow them on Instagram @Sowell House or visit their website, sowellhouse.com, to learn more.